If you, like many people, are drowning in a sea of often contradictory information, wondering where to start, let me lay out for you a straightforward 5-step plan that I'd follow if I were starting this journey all over again. Because navigating the wild ride of ME/CFS and long COVID is really tough. On top of being physically and mentally drained, you also have to deal with a healthcare system that doesn't offer much and hardly understands you, which is frustrating, to say the least. So this is why in this video, I'm sharing 5 steps and the most helpful resources that I wish I had known when I first got sick. First place to start with this, when you first are facing conditions like this, or you suspect you might be, is to get a diagnosis. And I know that might sound obvious, and I know I'm making it sound simpler than it actually is. And although there unfortunately has not been a ton of progress over the years when it comes to getting a diagnosis, there is some promising research coming out of the University of Oxford, which is kind of exciting, that is showing a potential blood test that could diagnose ME/CFS. But we're still a ways away from that. So until that happens, it is still a bit of a journey to get that diagnosis. So in many ways, this is a diagnosis of exclusion. Doctors have to rule out virtually all other illnesses. And when nothing else seems to be the culprit, if your symptoms fit a ME/CFS or long COVID diagnosis, then this is likely what you will get. And some diagnostic criteria, such as those put out by the CDC and the Mayo Clinic, indicate that you have to have been suffering with your symptoms for at least 6 months before you can get a diagnosis of ME/CFS. And the NICE criteria are a little shorter, a little nicer. That's the NISE in the UK. They indicate a minimum of 3 months of symptoms is necessary for a diagnosis. But regardless of the criteria used, many people go much, much longer before getting their diagnosis. But the diagnosis, is a very important starting place. So start with your doctor, get the standard battery of tests done, rule out as many things as you can, and then work with your doctor to see if your symptoms fit an ME/CFS or long COVID or potentially both diagnosis. And this is important not only because it's validating and nice to kind of have an understanding of what you have, it also helps you figure out your approach from there. How are you going to tackle treatment? And don't let anyone tell you that there aren't treatment options, because there absolutely are. And it's not only important for treatment and recovery, but it can also be important for things like insurance, if you're going on long-term disability or getting any sort of health benefits because of your condition. Having a diagnosis such as ME/CFS can really help you with that. I'm not sure what is currently happening with long COVID and how many insurance companies and government programs are accepting that as a condition. But if you do currently have long COVID and your condition fits the diagnosis of ME/CFS, it might be helpful to get that paperwork as well. All right. The next step after getting your diagnosis is to rule out a structural cause for your condition. Now, there is a lot that we still don't understand about conditions like ME/CFS, but one thing that many people seem to be in agreement about is that not everybody who is facing this is facing the exact same thing and has the same cause for their condition. So many people find it's helpful to get as many tests done as they can beyond that basic initial battery of tests. And this can be whatever your doctor is recommending. But a great thing is that now we as patients, as just people, have more and more control over what tests we decide to get done, because there are independent testing companies that you can use, and you can choose for yourself what tests you want to have done. So it's really important to get a thorough understanding of what's happening in your body and just see, is there any underlying physical cause there? Because that's going to help you figure out which way to go from there when you are treating this. And a lot of these tests, if you can do them through private companies, they're getting more and more affordable, and many of them you can do from home. So they send you a kit, you mail in some samples, and then you get the results online or through a consultation on a phone call with somebody, but you don't even have to leave your house. And if you're unsure what you have available in your area, a quick Google search will tell you exactly what you've got. And many companies deal with international or they do international shipping, so it isn't necessarily related or restricted to where you live. And if anything shows up as problematic, as much as you don't want anything to be wrong, you know that something is wrong, you're feeling very unwell, these results will point you in the direction to go next. And if there are structural abnormalities in your body, tests revealing insight into why you are feeling so awful, you'll know what things you need to tackle next. But if all the tests come back negative, as they often seem to, it probably means that all those scary structural problems are off the table, which is amazing news. Last week on my channel, I interviewed Jez Medinger, and he is a prominent figure in the long COVID and ME/CFS community, and he does an amazing job in this interview of explaining some of the different groups and categories that researchers and our information suggests that people fall into. And he breaks down some of these physical causes and some of these structural abnormalities. So his interview is an absolute must watch. It's one of the most information dense ones that I have on my channel in terms of really understanding what's happening, and from someone who is hands-on doing research himself and just really has his finger on the pulse of what's going on. So if anything is pointing you in the direction of structural abnormalities causing your ME/CFS, definitely give that video a watch and definitely check out his channel, because he has a wealth of information and resources there and expert interviews that break down a lot of what those different things are. But if your tests are all coming back normal and everything is showing as fine, and it's all pointing towards there not being any sorts of structural abnormalities in your body, all the doctors are saying you are perfectly healthy, and you're thinking, how? I can barely function. It doesn't mean that nothing is wrong. Obviously, something is still very wrong. You should not be feeling this way. You are not imagining your symptoms. You are just going to have to explore a different approach to resolving them than you first might have thought when you first started feeling sick. All right, so now on to step 3. So you've got your diagnosis, you've ruled out a structural cause, or you've ruled in a structural cause, in which case you're probably going to stop watching this video and you're going to watch Jez's interview, or you're going to go check out his channel, or you're just out busy dealing with those things. But if you've ruled out a structural cause, now it's time to rule in a neuroplastic cause. So what does that mean? You ask very good questions. So many people are finding that there is a hypersensitive threat assessment system happening in their brain, limbic system, and nervous system that keeps the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight system, engaged far more often than is helpful, which can trigger a wide range of debilitating symptoms. And when this happens, this is classed into what is referred to as a neuroplastic cause or a functional illness. So functional illnesses are medical conditions that cause symptoms but do not have an identifiable underlying physical or organic cause. So functional illnesses often involve complex interactions between the brain and the body. So this can be psychological, social, and biological factors. They may all play a role in the development and the persistence of your symptoms. And unlike diseases with clear physical causes, functional illnesses do not show a structural damage or consistent biochemical abnormalities in medical tests. And until quite recently, if you were diagnosed with a functional illness, the approach to this mainly revolved around managing symptoms and learning to cope with it, and essentially learning to live with it. But thankfully, we have come a really long way in our understanding of functional illnesses. I did an interview with Dr. Will Bostock. He runs a long COVID clinic in the UK out of Cambridge Progressive Medicine, and his interview on my channel is an absolute must watch. I will link it again, but talking about key resources, he explains what is happening with these functional illnesses far better than I ever could. And he is seeing this in a lot of the long COVID patients that he's treating. And when he approaches them from a different perspective of addressing the nervous system, he is seeing amazing results with recovery, which is incredible because it's so rare to hear about people who are facing ME/CFS or long COVID who are going to the conventional medical system and are actually getting effective treatment. Most people seem to be getting the answers they need through YouTube, but things are changing, which is amazing. Another option you have if you are still unsure if what you are facing is in fact a functional illness is to do a self-assessment quiz. There are a number of different ones online. A really good one that I came across is through a nonprofit based in the UK called Living Proof. I will link their website in the video description. Definitely check it out if you are still trying to figure this out of sort of what type of ME/CFS or long COVID you have. It walks you through some simple questions to help you assess your symptoms and get a better understanding of what is happening and if what you are facing might in fact be a neuroplastic condition or a functional illness. Another option you sometimes have is to have a doctor do an assessment for you. Not all doctors are trained or up to date on the latest research on this, but you can check out Dr. Howard Schubiner's website. I will link it in the video description, and he has a list of doctors who can do this sort of functional illness assessment with you. And Dr. Schubiner, if you're not aware, is a student of the late Dr. John Sarno and the leading voice right now in Mind Body Medicine. His work is incredibly important. Not only has he continued Dr. Sarno's legacy, but he's also taken it to a whole new level. There is a randomized clinical study published about 2 years ago now that sheds more light on Dr. Sarno's ideas. And there is a link in the video description, another great resource for you to check out if you'd like to learn more about this. All right, so now we're on to step number 4. If you are still with me, that's because you have got a diagnosis, you have ruled out a structural cause, you have ruled in a neuroplastic cause. So now it's time to find a recovery program. There are so many great programs out there now, a lot of amazing information and recovery strategies. There is no need for you right now to reinvent the wheel. And there is absolutely no reason for you to navigate this alone and try and figure this out all on your own. For decades, many of us, myself included, felt really mostly alone in this, and we're just sort of stumbling around in the dark, and trial and error and recovery took way longer than it should. And for many people, unfortunately, recovery just never came. But now we have so many options out there, and just take a look at what's available and don't overthink it too much. Just find one that speaks to you. And the good news is that recovery programs for a while were really quite pricey, and there are still some that are, but the majority go for about a few $100s, which is much more in the manageable range. So if you are facing a neuroplastic condition or a functional illness, there are a lot of programs out there that many people are finding success with. Programs like the Gupta program or ANS Rewire or Reorigin, Primal Trust, and CFS School are all effective for many people, and they are budget friendly. And I have interviewed people, either the founders or people who work for those programs on this channel, so I can put some links in the video description for each one of those if you want to take a look and see if any of them sort of speak to you. They've all got a bit of a unique approach, but all work to get at the core of the issue. And I've also got a recovery program of my own coming out in January 2024 called Brain Retraining 101 for ME/CFS and long COVID recovery. It is a program that incorporates the feedback I've received from thousands of people on what works for them and what they would want their sort of perfect recovery program to look like. So you can check that out in January. It might be out already by the time you're watching this. And in that case, it will be linked in the video description as well. And you can see if it might be a good fit for you. And keep in mind that some people do really well when they have a health coach to work with. So many people that I've recovered on the channel have said that having a health coach was vital. Some programs have the coaching incorporated right into it, some of them don't. But if they don't, there are health coaches out there that can just help you and support you as you're going through the program, which can be a really helpful thing. And if you're not sure of where to find a health coach, my friend, amazing friend, Liz Carlson, has a list of health coaches on her website. So I will link that in the video description if this is something that you're looking for. And she also has on her website a recovery programs guide where she has interviewed the founders of these programs, interviewed people who have taken the programs. It's just a really amazing resource for people who are trying to figure out what program to take. Mine isn't in there because it wasn't out yet when she put it out. But maybe Liz, hey, could you add it in there? But I will link that in the video description as well. It is 19 US dollars, so really reasonable. All right, and last step is to just, whatever you are doing, just stick with it and know that you've got this. You are not going to get everything perfectly. Nobody does. There are no perfect days. You're going to skip stuff you're supposed to do. Just do your best and forgive the rest. It is important to have a plan with your recovery and do your best to stick to that plan, but also have some serious flexibility with that plan, because for most people, virtually all people, symptoms come and go seemingly out of nowhere. You have good days and less good days, and just some days you are capable of more and some days are just going to be rest and recovery days. So go through this knowing that it's not going to be a perfect, straight line towards recovery. You're going to feel stress. I think we feel that we're supposed to be in this Zen space and we worry that stress is going to set back our recovery. There's no way you're getting through this without feeling stress. Nobody does. Just do what you can to bring as much self-compassion into your recovery journey and as much kindness towards yourself, and just to try and minimize the stress that you're piling on yourself, but know that having some is inevitable and is okay. People are struggling, people doubt the process, people lose hope, they lose faith, and they still recover. You don't have to be positive and in a Zen relaxed state and fully buying into everything to get to the finish line. Just do your best with your mindset to be in that headspace, but know that you won't always be there. Recent studies like the Boulder Back Pain Study, a randomized clinical study, are turning what we know about chronic symptoms upside down. The findings imply that most chronic symptoms are neuroplastic in nature and not structural. And this is mind-blowing, right? I mean, it's really a paradigm change. That's why I think it is so important to take time to let these ideas sink in and immerse yourself in recovery stories. Not only will you learn a great deal because each recovery journey is unique, but you'll also start noticing recovery patterns. I've laid out the patterns I've noticed from 75 recovery interviews that I did. You can check it out on the screen here or in the video description. Another really great resource for navigating your recovery. And even if you've watched it before, it's helpful to revisit it from time to time because your understanding will evolve and you will approach it with fresh eyes. I've also got new information and resources for you here on this channel every single week. So if you haven't yet subscribed, I invite you to consider subscribing. And I also put out a newsletter every week that features one recovery story, just because you're not going to stay on top of all of the videos. I have over 100 or 125 recovery stories on my channel so far, so there's no way you're going to watch them all. But this way you get it delivered straight to you, just in point form, the kind of the key takeaways, what worked, what didn't, key resources that got them there, to kind of help ensure that you aren't missing a thing. A link for that in the video description as well. And I am honored right now to give a shout out to one of our channel members today, a Smart Grandma. Thanks, Smart Grandma, for supporting the channel by joining and becoming a channel member. And even more importantly, for having such an awesome YouTube handle. Smart Grandma, you are clearly far cooler than I could ever be. And thanks to all of you for watching. I hope you got something out of this. And if you did, consider smashing that like button and subscribing and maybe even becoming a channel member like Smart Grandma did. And I hope to see you in this next video.